and welcome to yet another episode of She Conquers. Igama lami uPhindile Zwane. And as you know, kule show we look at some serious challenges that are faced by the South African youth. Siphinde sikhulume nabantu abahlukile about their experiences, baphinde basinike advice ukuze sizokwazi ukufundisana. On the previous episode, besikhuluma nge-teenage pregnancy and how so many girls are pressured into some difficult situations. Today, we are diving in deeper.
We, to this day, don't educate people enough on gender-based violence. If you start them young, you can change everything.
Every day in South Africa, 3 women are killed by their partners, which is a femicide, which is very scary.
I was raped at 7 and then I was raped again at 9. That sort of changed me in a way, and I was not like the other kids.
Bring all the men. Let's have a discussion with them about this. They must understand that they don't own young women. And the young women must also understand they are not properties of men.
That's right. Namhlanje sobe sikhuluma nge-gender-based violence and how young people are affected. With the rise of the social media, more and more people are posting and sharing their traumatic stories, which has led to there being more support structures for the victims and more people from all over the world coming together and standing in solidarity, trying to expose the perpetrators and reducing the violent occurrences. This is where movements like #MeToo were born. Today's question is, what more needs to be done? But before we talk to our first guest, let's go find out what people have to say about gender-based violence. Why do you think gender-based violence continues to be such a big problem, Naimzansi?
A woman is viewed not as a human being but as an object.
They never take the person seriously because it's a thing of what proof do we have? They assume that the person was asking for it.
I'll report the problem to the police. They just say solve it between you and your partner, you know.
Even though they are being abused, but abafuni ukuhlukana notata umntana just because of umntana. And in some cases, we,
to this day, don't educate people enough on gender-based violence.
Ukufundisa abantu besilisa ukuthi uyindoda wena indoda ayikhali fanele uprovide zonke lezo zinto. I think it plays a big factor and a big role ekuthaneni kube khona gender-based violence.
As much as we'd like to believe ukuthi gender-based violence is something that everyone is actively trying to combat, iqiniso ukuthi there's still a lot of people who think violence is the answer to their problems. And this extends beyond women versus men at home. This is something affects abantwana as well. Our first guest for namhlanje is a perfect example of someone who is affected by this and what happens to kids when their safety is not looked into. Asambeni sembona.
Matabo. I'm 24 years old and I reside in Johannesburg, but originally from Limpopo, Ramphahlele, Ligurung. And growing up, I was cute in my way, and then a freak to others because I was misunderstood.
Why do you think you were misunderstood? What about you?
Well, I was raped at 7 and then I was raped again at 9. The person that raped me was a family friend. Unfortunately, he had his own thoughts in his head and that's when he took advantage of me and raped me. So that sort of changed me in a way and I was not like the other kids.
And when it happened again when you were 9?
Yes, again it was someone who's family and it happened again and then I did not speak. Even if I did want to speak, what would I say to my parents? Because it's not that easy to mention sex and vaginas and I felt like somehow I was to blame for everything that happened and I withdrew totally from people.
And who was the first person that you were able to tell about?
I was never able to talk about it until later in life. I started speaking only when I was 18 and that's after everything went wrong. I became a rebel at 15.
Everything was just building up.
It had built up. Yeah, it built up. Then I exploded at 15 because I ended up running away from home to live in the streets. I still get chills when I think about it and I'm thinking to myself, how on earth did I survive that? Because I put myself in very dangerous situations and I was still very young and naive. But I kept on in the street. I stayed for a couple of months until eventually my body just gave up on me and the police caught up with me and took me home. I was able to go back to school, and then I graduated this year in transport and logistics. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
So how was your family's reaction when you finally came out with what happened to you at 7 and 9?
I never really got closure coming from them, because they never showed me that they are in this with me and things like that. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to make it about them. It's not about being believed, it's about me getting my healing. So I left it like that. I just diverged from wanting them to believe me or having to explain myself on what date happened, what I was wearing and things like that. Yeah. So I decided to write a book, and with writing, it was very therapeutic for me and very challenging, because I shut the world out and focused too much on how I was really feeling and how things made me feel, what really happened. So I put myself out in the book, and after I was done with it is when I realized that I had a lot of things that I was not speaking about, and they were weighing me down.
And you did this whole thing all by yourself?
Yes, yes. And I'm running my own publishing company now.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yes. After quitting school and then having my own company today, it's very empowering for me.
Sure. So looking back at the young girl who was so scared to talk about the incident, what would you say right now, as the Matabo that you are right now, to that little girl?
Never be scared. If it's hurting you, you need to speak out. And if you keep quiet, then you're going to become a ticking time bomb. Everything that makes you uncomfortable should be spoken about.
Matabo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a great interview with Matabo, and I'm so amazed by the strength that she has. Even though she wasn't able to receive support from her family or other people, she was able to look into herself and find the strength to write an amazing book that will be so helpful to other young girls who went through a similar situation. She is indeed a conqueror of her past. Right now, we're going to an ad break. See you soon.
My name is Pearl Moabelo, and I am from the Gauteng Department of Social Development. If one is exposed to the perpetual behavior of violence, they grow up to normalize violence. However, there are interventions, there are services that can be provided to one. We have social workers who can now put that individual, that child within our programs. They can go through a therapeutic session with the social worker to then make them to unlearn the behavior of violence. Therefore, they are able now to be reintegrated back within the society with the normal values, that they can become individuals who are positive in terms of their outlook in life. We are working with the Department of Education, where we have social workers deployed within the various schools of Gauteng. Through the intervention of the educators, they are able now to pick up certain behaviors that are not acceptable within the school. Therefore, those children would then be dealt with in terms of assessment, intervention, psychosocial support, and even further intervention if there is a need for even a medical or to report a case. So then at that stage, then they would deal with the whole family holistically, because you need to also to involve the parents, the whole family as well. And also we have our victim empowerment centers. Those are the services that are placed within police stations. Then an individual can just walk in, report a case, then they would receive necessary intervention in those spaces. We also have what we call the Tutuzela centers. The Tutuzela centers are based in the major hospital, where now one can go within the hospital and request for a Tutuzela center, where they would receive a psychosocial support from the social worker, a medical attention from the medical practitioner, a police officer would be there, the law enforcers would also be there to assist them to open a case, to assist them to take the DNA in an instance of a rape. In an instance whereby, like you've indicated, to say that one would then be dependent on the perpetrator, we as a Department of Social Development are funding the shelters, where the shelter are there solely now to remove the victim from access to the perpetrator. And while they are still within the shelters, they would get accommodation, psychosocial support. They would be getting court preparations for the court to go through the law enforcement processes. Their children then would still have access to basic education in terms of them accessing the ECDs within where the shelter will be based. We are there as a responsive government to ensure to say that our community needs to be receiving the necessary assistance that they might need from the department. So therefore we don't charge our services.
It's so sad to know Uguti, there's so many women who are affected by violence on a regular basis. But luckily, there are people who have dedicated their lives into combating gender-based violence by providing a safe space for the survivors. Right now, we're about to meet up with one of those people all the way in Boksburg who are going to tell us about what they do, how they do it, and what their thoughts on the future are. Let's go.
Hi. All right. Okay. Welcome. I am a registered nurse by profession, but I specialize in forensics, and I found myself becoming a sexual assault care practitioner, and right now I'm specializing with children, like abused children. How we handle issues of child abuse or child issues in general it determines ukuthi adult life yabizo banjani. We need to understand that more than 80% of abantwana abuse abantu closer to them. And most of the time abantwana, they still love their abusers. You know, there's a huge a gap in dealing with child abuse, especially in cases of gender-based violence where baba no mama uyalo, and everybody is worried about abantu abadala, and they forget that the violence is normalized for abantwana. We understand. We find them in our adult lives, and they come in a form of a serial rapists, in a form of, you know, the Karabo Mukwena's boyfriend.
Because of their own traumas.
Because their own trauma as children. And actually research has been done to show Gucci Abandona, Abaye Baba, physically abused, exposed to gender-based violence, they become monsters in a way, in sense of Gucci, they lack that empathy. We need to raise children that are not going to having to recover from their childhood, because these things, they play out in their adult life. That's why as a country we have a high rate of domestic violence. And like if research has been done, and almost 50% of young women are saying, yes, I've witnessed some form of gender-based violence in a relationship. And we're looking at our stats that every day in South Africa, 3 women are killed by their partners, which is a femicide, which is very scary. And we know with gender-based violence, there are women who are abusing our men. Yes, there are. But we're not having those conversations where a woman feels it's okay if I told her kuti partner yake yachita kuti amshaye ngempama. The sexual assault that happens within emsebenzini. But also, we, as women, we need not to be enablers, because it's okay for women to say things to men. Which you can say, oh la la, hey, agase umchele, hey, 6-pack yako. But as a woman, if I'm at, hey baby, reverse yako, we become offended. You understand? So we need to balance that. If it's not okay for women to say to a man, then it's not okay for me. So we need to respect each other. And for us, we need to have those conversations.
So with the statistics now compared to the past, are we getting any better?
You know, the issue of statistics, it's viewed differently. 10 years ago, you know, you wouldn't go on Facebook or Twitter, ubone umuntu eshayiwe onjani. It wasn't. People are saying, hey, ngathi abafazi sebabulawa kakhulu. Kanti uthola ukuthi they've always been killed. And I think i-role media is there to educate people.
And to help people have the conversation.
To have the conversation. Tina, in South Africa, we are top there when it comes to issues of gender-based violence and child abuse, which is a disgrace. So what it means now, it means Gucci, everybody needs to come on board. And even in schools, they understand, in high schools, you'll find Gucci, there's a bro code. Even if Gwenzakala something, if somebody has seen something, they can't say anything because snitches get stitches. You understand? And it's a circle. Each gender-based violence is a circle. So we cannot put a plaster esilondeni, we have to scrape it off. We have to be very intense in our primary intervention programs. There's schools, and it's not in high school, grade R, crash.
Educate them while they're still young.
We don't have to wait until Baba teenage.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. We had such an interesting conversation, and thank you so much for being so passionate about the work that you do and helping out everyone, helping out the kids and the parents and everyone around. So good luck to everything that you do.
Thank you very much.
That was a very insightful conversation. And it's so interesting to find out ukuthi abantwana who grow up in violent homes end up repeating the same mistakes that their parents or their siblings made, and they end up being violent themselves. But we're so fortunate to have places like this with people who are so passionate to helping kids, women and men with such problems. Right now we're about to go to an ad break, but after that we'll be talking to the Minister of Health, Honorable Mr. Aaron Motsoaledi. How do you think we can try to resolve this problem?
We need to have workshops. If you start them young, you can change everything.
Men-to-men talk, I think it can help.
Teaching children from a very young age and just telling people that let's just respect each other.
Having billboards and stuff like that.
The best way is just to report, maybe bathethe nabantu ababathembayo, and also report the matter.
If we can all stand up for women and actually see that we are all equals, instead of men telling themselves that they're dominant and women are just under them.
Girls should start believing in themselves and actually believe how they can make it out there without anyone's help.
Oh, probably we could have those march as women to put against those things in township, most especially because that's where they can't speak for themselves.
Like house to house,
I think we have to change our beliefs and our traditions and the stereotypes that are instilled in our minds.
So mangase kube ukuthi siyafundisana nje as a nation more bayiphathe kanjani abantu besilisa behloniphe bemazi umuntu osifazane bebona ukuthi akusiyi punching bag akusiyi umuntu okushaya.
While She Conquers is targeting specifically girls and young women between the ages of 15 and 24, we also target men, boys and men who impregnate them and who also infect them, and speak to them about these issues so that they get socialized together. The aim of She Conquers is to go, for instance, to the village crawl. We have got headmen there, we've got traditional leaders. Tell them to bring all the men, or to a church, bring all the men. Let's have a discussion with them about these issues. They must understand that they don't own young women. And the young women must also understand they are not properties of men. And so teach them and socialize them together. I know it's very difficult because some men believe it's oppressing them. They used to rule over everything. They used to be the monarch of all they survey. And they believe that now this issue of gender equality is actually weakening them. But in She Conquers, we target them. Because without the cooperation of men and their understanding, this thing is not going to work. That's why even in the search campaign, we are also targeting men, because we want men to come to the party. Because if you look, there are common denominators in all these things. Be it gender-based violence is men. Teenage pregnancy is men. HIV AIDS is men. So without men, all these problems won't be there. That's why we can't target women only. We've got to pay special attention to men. You can't just concentrate all women because they are not the one who perpetrate the violence on themselves. It's men. So in She Conquers, the involvement of men is specifically to discourage them from this gender-based violence. They are violent because they really believe they own these women. They believe it's their property. So it's important to socialize them when they are still young. And that, by the way, I believe must also be taught at school. Because even young boys are socialized to be believing that they are superior to women. That's unfortunately how the world of patriarchy has been. It is socialization to believe that somebody who slaps you is a sign of love. It's no different from during the times of slavery, where some slaves came to believe their master has got a right to do what he's doing. And we read from history that after abolition of slavery, some slaves could not live on their own. They had to go to their master. They were so used to living under somebody who shamboxed them who ill-treats them, they believe is part and parcel of life. That's why we are saying, when we teach She Conquers, young women are taught that they must know they are human beings in their own right. They are not owned by anybody. And if we start teaching this at schools, for both girls and young women to understand these issues, perhaps future generations will live free of these problems. But our present generations are still encumbered by the way in which we were made to grow up and socialized. One of the objectives of She Conquers is to impart skills and economic opportunities to these young girls. And many of them have already gone through such skills and opportunities, because many of them say we are doing this because this man gives me money to buy cell phones, to buy airtime, to do my hair, my nails, he buys me denims and sneakers and all that. So yes, sugar daddies basically are people who provide material things in return for sex. And so we also involve it as a program, include it as a program in She Conquers, for both men and women, that this is wrong, by the way. In the She Conquers campaign, we have already made some progress. Unfortunately, I don't have the figures here. On all 5 programs, in terms of figures, how many young people have been reached, how many parents have been taken through parenting skills, how many young people have been put through PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, how many have been put through post-exposure prophylaxis, how many have gone through our reproductive health and rights program and been given contraception. All those figures are there, but it's in terms of numbers of people reached. What we are waiting for will be the outcomes. The outcomes obviously takes a longer time. They will be reviewed after 5 years. After 5 years of She Conquers, do you see a reduction in this and that behavior? Do you see a reduction in the number of young people who have to go for abortions? Do you see an increase in the number of young girls who have gone up to matric? That takes a little bit of time. But the progress of about who have we reached and what have we done, we do have such figures. Unfortunately, I don't have them here with me now.
Gender-based violence continues to threaten the lives of so many young people from all over the world. And if this problem is not engaged directly, the perpetrators are going to continue to bully, traumatize, or even murder defenseless people. We need to send a strong message that enough is enough by providing more support for the survivors and finding ways to ensure that the frequency of the occurrences goes all the way down. Well, that's it for today's show, and thank you so much for joining us. If you want to continue this conversation, please do visit our website on sheconquerssa.co.za or visit any of our social media pages. Igama lami uPhindile Zwane, and see you again next time. Ciao!